In the first episode, we created a class which allowed us to manage the amount of silver we create and we spend. The next logical step is to either create a way to spend the silver or to create the silver. In this episode, we will focus on making a way which creates silver and which is actually quite simple and which generates a stable amount of silver. Here is a simple class definition of a silver generator. I've been asked before, so I'll say it again. When I mean generator in idle game situation, I do mean a node, an entity, a feature, whatever you want to call it, which generates a certain amount of resources every X or Y seconds. And this is exactly what this generator does. We define an amount of silver we want to generate per tick, we define the tick duration, and that's it. The methods are actually not that hard to implement, the heavy lifting being done by the timer itself. Yeah, it will be a simple class to implement. So if you feel confident, you actually can try to make this class on your own. However, if you want the guided tutorial, of course, this is what we're going to do today. We are now in Godot, and as usual, we will start by making a scene because we're doing a singleton here, the generator silver. So let's just create that scene as a Ray basic default node. So first, let's make it a singleton. Alright, that's the usual thing we do there. The singleton's ready, so let's take a look at the blueprint we have. According to the blueprint, we only need to create 3 properties: the generated silver per tick, tick duration, and the timer. If you don't know this tag here, the onReady tag, which you can add to any variable, allows you to say or inform the engine that the variable default assignment that you do when you declare the variable should happen when the node is ready and not at the usual time, which is way earlier, way before the node entered the tree, that those two other variables do, basically. This is something that is explained in the crash course, but basically summarized, the nodes aren't in the scene tree yet, so you can't get a node in the scene tree when the nodes are not in the scene tree. So this is why you wait for onReady to use the getNode method to get the node. In fact, I'm gonna use the entire method here, because even though the writing with the dollar sign is good, I think it's important that you understand exactly what it means, and it is using a function, a built-in function of the node object, right? And yeah, this is interesting to understand. So let's create that timer node that we're using. And now let's focus on doing the onReady things. So what we want to do basically is to apply the tick duration to our timer here. So timer dot wait time is going to be equal to tick duration. All right. We then want to check that our timer properties are right. So it's not a one shot and it doesn't auto start. So this is good. From this point, it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to start the timer in the ready method. But because we will be using a start and stop function or requests, we can not start it. It doesn't matter, but yeah, it doesn't matter. So we do have the ready function, and then we do need to create a stop and stop requests, and we'll have two other functional methods, which will be generate silver and on timer timeout, which should be typed. One thing that strikes us when we write a on something method is that we need to connect it, right? This is kind of a reflex we need to create. I write a method that starts with on, so I need to connect it. Here we use the timeout signal of the timer, right? So we can just check the timer, check the signals, and we do correctly have this timeout signal, which is emitted when the timer reaches 0, right? So every time the timer will complete a cycle, it will trigger that signal that we catch to generate silver. Well, actually I want the method, generate silver. So here, the generate silver method is very interesting because we will be using the manager silver that we created to create silver, and we will use the actual property that we created. And that's actually all we have to do here. Eventually, one could consider creating a signal if there's any reason to actually use that information. You might want to consider that. So if you want, let's actually do it for the sake of doing it. You can create a signal which is generated silver, and we can emit that in there. Generated silver emitted. I didn't plan to do that signal originally because I have actually no real use for it and don't really plan to use that kind of signal, but we never know. We never know. As for the start and stop method, they actually use methods from our timer node. So here, if we check the documentation of the timer node, we do have the start and stop timer. So it's exactly what we need. Here we're just going to go with timer.start and timer.stop. And that's actually it. We have an entity which is able to generate silver every X amount of time. So since I actually said in the first episode that we created a butler, I guess we can say that we created a miner or a minter. I think it's mint for printing money, even though you're not printing coins, but I guess you're minting coins? I'm not so sure. Well, anyway, that's not really the point. So that's pretty much all there is to do and say about this timer. Then how you use it is very much up to you. Here I have listed a few things which could be interesting to look at and which could be interesting to implement. So these are a few exercises that you can explore. The first one is simply creating components which are buttons which start and stop the generator. So this is the simplest one. You just create buttons which are going to be connected on the corresponding methods, right? That's the simplest thing to do. The next thing, if you want to step up a little bit, is to actually disable the buttons when necessary. What I mean here is that when you start the timer, then the start button becomes disabled and the stop button becomes enabled. This can be a little bit trickier to do because it might need signals that don't exist in the generator yet, and actually I will add another line to that, which is use the disabled property of the button. In order to step up a little bit, you can even create one button that toggles on and off the entire generator. Then, if you want to go further and you actually need it, because not every game is going to need that, but many people are actually interested in clicker game or idle game, you can use this other prompt here, which is make a clicker class. So based on the crash course and this generator class episode, you should actually be able to create this clicker class. Anyway, no matter what you're doing and what's going to happen in the next minutes, because those aren't planned and I'm just using the free time I have to actually show the answers or solutions to those exercises, I will not make the clicker here, but if you do want more advanced information regarding generators or clickers, they are videos dedicated to that. I actually have one video dedicated to clickers and one video dedicated to generators. And you might want to check those if you really want to go deeper in that topic. Here, for the sake of the tutorial pace, I will just stick with that at the moment, and we will see how to implement other features which are more interesting. So let's actually create a single toggle button. Okay. First, I will begin by actually expanding the signals. So we have generator started, and actually this, okay, there are a little bit too much spaces here. Generator started, generator stopped. I'm also considering adding a new request, which is gonna check if the generator is active. So here, I'm gonna go with is active, and this is actually gonna return a boolean. So at the moment I will return true by default, and this will not be void. So alright, so this way we will be able to know if we need that. We'll be able to know if the timer is running or not. So do we actually have something that allows us to say if the timer is stopped or not? Yes, we do have this method, is stopped. Return true if the timer is stopped. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, here basically it's the opposite. So we're gonna return not, which inverts the boolean value of timer dot is stopped. All right. Then we need to fire up those two signals, generator started, generator stopped. So we're gonna go with generator started here and generator stopped here. I'm also starting to think that I do want to create that toggle method. So here, I'm actually gonna put that after. We're gonna create a toggle method, which will not return anything. And what we're gonna do is actually check the state of the timer to create the opposite trigger. So here we're gonna check if we are active. So if the generator is active, what we will do is actually stop the generator. Otherwise, if it is not active, we will start the generator. Okay. So with those new methods, we actually should able to create an on-off button which properly starts or stops the generator. So let's create a new scene, which will be our button. So let's change the type to button. There is the check button, which is a toggle button. You can use this one, but it's a little bit trickier if you want to use that, because the check button is firing a toggle value. So you can try working with this one, but it's going to be requiring the use of a toggle argument, which needs to change a few things in the generator class, which I'm not doing right here. I'm just going to go with a regular button. So here, that button, let's name it generator toggle button. Okay, let's have it centered with a default size of 320/80. And the text at the moment is going to be on off. Okay. Actually, we could do something even more interesting. I will see if I do that afterward. So here, as you can see, we have the disabled property, right? Which says if true, the button is disabled. That's what I suggested on the other exercise. That's the property which is going to be used. And we have toggle mode. If true, the button is in toggle mode, makes the button flip state between pressed and unpressed. This is definitely not what we want. So let's save these components first. Let's create a generator, actually button generator, or I'm not so sure here. My English is failing me. But anyway. So let's create a simple script for this guy. And we will need a onPressed method. And of course, we will need to link this onPressed method. So pressed will be connected. So what we want to do on pressed here is to actually toggle the generator, which is great because we did create a method for that. So we can go with silver generator, actually, silver generator, and use the toggle method that we have. So this is the first thing. The second thing is, eventually, we might want the button to show a different text based on its state. Let's actually watch for the two signals that we created, which are onGenerator started and onGenerator stopped. And actually, the isActive is going to be useful because here we're going to be able to create a function update text, which we will use at the start of the application or when the button is loaded, because here what we want to check is if silver generator is active, actually. So if it is active, then text is going to be equal to generator on, and if not, then we will go with generator off. In fact, we do have duplicates of text here. So since we have duplicates, I'm going to create a few constants which are generator on text and generator of text. The reason for that is to actually allow the maintaining of these values to be easier on the future. So here text is going to be equal to generator on, and I triggered equal twice, which is sad. So yeah, if we do change the text here, then we only need to change it once, and if we have various other places, we don't miss a place and forget to update one place, because they will all change at once. So if silver is not active, then text is going to be equal to generator of text. Okay, so let's actually open the game scene here. It's kind of busy, so let's clean this and just add a label silver at the top, which will be, yes, centered top. And just to be sure, I will make this a header large in the theme variations, and I will also add the button generator toggle. I will add it to the game, actually, not the manager silver. So the button is going to be centered, perfect. And now I also need to add the generator to the game, right? That makes sense. Let's add the generator here. Okay, so we only have to try the game now. So we do have the on-off button, which means that we didn't put this update text in already here. So let's actually update text here and fire up the game again. The generator is off, and we can click on it to have it to start, and it will generate 1 silver per second. So if you dislike this white thing around the button, you can just go in the generator toggle and change the focus method to none. This is something you can do. The consequences of that is that you lose the focus which is used for the web navigation style, where you use tabulations and you can use enter, things like this. So if those are features that you need, but you don't want the white border, which is very rare situations, but it exists, you can always create a different theme in Godot, which is theme editing. But yes, that's something you can do if you want. I'm not going to talk about theme editing in this video, but maybe later. Probably not in this series, but if you guys need it, just ask it. I have a few answers for that. So anyway, we can now save and go back to the game, and yes, the generator is on and it's generating silver. Alright, this is going to be everything we will do today for this episode. I hope you liked it, and if you did like it, think about letting YouTube know about it. And if you have specific things you want to see in this series, ask somewhere, comments, Discord, whatever. I will actually think about incorporating those things in the series. I have a few planning for a few episodes, because at the moment I want the game to be very general, and I actually want to focus on how to implement features, and I will make things general, right? So if you want to see general features coming in, like quests, achievements, whatever, ask this, and I will make sure that they are in a priority list for whatever's coming. Anyway, I will see you in the next video, and you practice. That's how you get better at making games.